Hello everyone, welcome to Trade Breakdown on EU. As always, first of all, I'm going to start off with a weekly time frame to do my higher time frame analysis to determine my drawn liquidity both for the short term and the long term, right? Now, if you watched the previous breakdowns, then you'd already know that my long term drawn liquidity is the weekly range high above us, right? That's like the level for me that I'm looking at for the long term, right? As soon as the short-term drawn liquidity is reached, my next expectation is going to be the long-term drawn liquidity, that is the weekly range above us, right? But obviously we know that before we could reach the long-term drawn liquidity, we need to first of all have retracement and to reach the short-term drawn liquidity, and only then we're gonna start moving higher towards the long-term drawn liquidity, right? So right here you can see that we've got this weekly CRT, right? And the reason this candle is a weekly CRT is because this particular candle took out the weekly range high to the left, right? And now I've taken this candle as a weekly CRT, and what you can see right here is that last week we purged the high of the CRT and then we closed lower. Now even this week, first of all, my expectation is to expect price to take out this weekly CRT low and then potentially test this weekly order block right here, right? And then we can look for confirmations on the lower time frame as to whether we are looking for even lower prices, or we want to expect price to start expanding higher towards the long-term drawn liquidity, right? So what that means is that I've determined my short-term drawn liquidity to be this weekly CRT low, right, and this weekly order block, and my buys respectively is going to be bearish until the low is taken, the CRT low is taken, and the order block is tested, right? So now I'm going to go down to the daily time frame to refine this thought process even more to see if you've got anything else there. So on the daily time frame, you can see that on the daily time frame, you can see that first of all, we had this micro CRT, this daily micro CRT within the macro weekly CRT, right? And we purged it last week, and then we started moving lower towards the opposite end of the range, right? We still have yet to take out the weekly opposite end of the range, which is the weekly CRT low, right? And you can see that since last week, we've been moving lower towards the drawn liquidity lower, which is this weekly CRT. And you can see right here it aligns with this daily FVG, right? So even on the daily time frame, my refined drawn liquidity is still this weekly CRT low or potentially this daily order block, right? That is my higher time frame thought process, right? So now you can see the two objectives on the higher time frames have been accomplished, right? I've determined my drawn liquidity in my higher time frame buys, right? And my bias is bearish, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the 4-hour time frame to find a CRT there, and then to potentially build a narrative there as to why and how the price is going to go towards the drawn liquidity, right? Obviously it cannot go in a straight line to lower towards the drawn liquidity, the short-term drawn liquidity. Obviously it's going to move in phases, and now that's my job to build a narrative there to properly position myself in a CRT, and then potentially trade the CRT on the lower time frame while targeting the short-term drawn liquidity, right? So let's move over to the 4-hour time frame and let's see how I analyze the charts there. On the 4-hour time frame right here, you can see that on Monday we didn't have anything significant, right? So for that reason I had skipped Monday. I did not trade it Monday, right? Then what happened on Tuesday is that even on Tuesday my expectation was still lower towards the drawn liquidity. But obviously you know that I had to position myself in a CRT first, right? And for that, what I expected is that for the first half of the day on Tuesday, I wanted price to purge above these candles right here, and specifically this candle, and that would have been my CRT, right? And after that, my plan was to find a model 1 entry on the 15-minute time frame, right? Now, one of the reason and one of the main factor as to why I wanted to see a purge above these candles, right, is that this candle had generated liquidity in the form of forming a ranging profile in the lower time frame during the CBDR and the Asian session, right? During that particular time window, price formed a ranging profile in the lower time frame, and you can see it was in the form of these 4-hour candles, right? And I wanted to see, and I expected a normal intraday protraction profile above these candles, right, before I could take an entry. That were my expectations for the first half of the year on Tuesday. But right here you can see that price never purged these candles right here, right? It never purged these candles, but I still took an entry there on the entry charts because of one main thing, right? Because of SMT divergence, right? I was at the same time while I was watching euro, I was also monitoring the dollar chart, the DXY charts as well, right? And what I saw is that during the London Open, DXY or the dollar successfully purged these candles low, right? Obviously for dollar, for the DXY, the chart is inverted. So on DXY, what happened is that DXY successfully purged the candles low and these candles, and it had a normal intraday protraction profile on the 15-minute time frame. But on EU struggled to purge these candles and showed signs of weakness, right? And it didn't form any normal intraday protraction profile, which means that we had an SMT, right? Obviously, I couldn't trade DXY because you cannot trade it, right? Even though in such cases, my priority is always going to be to trade the pair which had the purge, but obviously I couldn't trade DXY because it's not tradable. So the only option I had was to trade EU. So I looked for a model 1 entry on EU in the 15-minute time frame, but I had risk lower than I usually do because EU didn't had the purge. But I still was convicted enough. I still had enough conviction in that trade idea that I traded it on the 15-minute time frame, right? The narrative was that I was looking for these candles to be purged before taking an entry, right? And that would have been a normal intraday protection profile for me, but only DXY did it, right? Only DXY showed that intraday normal protection profile, and EU struggled to take the candles, right? Which mean there was a non-symmetry in price and the market was in a non-symmetrical condition, right? And what that suggests is that price action is unlikely going to continue to the upside, and the potential outcome for price is to reverse and expand lower. And you can see that's exactly what happened here, right? DXY showed a normal protraction profile, so that means on EU there is going to be a delayed protraction profile because of the SMT divergence. These candles on the EU are going to stay protected because of the SMT divergence, but on the DXY it took out and purged these candles, right? So that is, as soon as the SMT was confirmed, I traded it on the lower time frame on EU on the 15-minute time frame in the model in the type of a model 1 entry, right? So on DXY, let's say it again, price purged higher and EU struggled to go higher. Now on DXY, price purged below the candle's low and EU struggled to go higher because of SMT divergence, right? So I knew that those candles high on EU are protected because of SMT, right? And I knew that EU is now destined to go and expand lower, right? So then the only thing that I had to do was match price with a key level, right? Before I could take an entry there. And what we have on the EU on the 4 hour time frame is that we've got this order block right here on EU. I took this as my key level, right? And what happened is that price tested this key level while also having the SMT. It also tested this 4 hour key level during London Open at a key time, right? One of the main factor why I had so much conviction in this trade idea is because of the key time this 4 hour candle, 4 hour order block and 4 hour key level was tested, and we had the SMT, right? The SMT occurred at a key time. We tested this key level at a key time, right? And obviously on the DXY charts, price purged below the candles low at a key time, right? Which was the 3 a.m. which was the 3 a.m. Eastern time, which is like a key macro for these sort of stuff, right? That's why I had so much conviction in it. Now we know that like the London Open, this whole kill zone of London Open is like key times for purges and price to test key levels, but even within that London Open kill zone, we then have specific macros, right? For example, in New York Open, we have the 8:30 or 9:30 macro, right? Similarly, in the same way, during the London Open kill zone, we have the 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a key macro and key time for price to either have SMT divergence, for price to either have a CRT purge, or for price to test a key level. And you can see at this particular time all of those three things happened. We had an SMT price purge above the candles on DXY, price purge below the candles on DXY at this particular time. we formed an SMT at this key time, and also along with that on EU we tested this for our order block, right? That's why I had so much conviction. So as soon as price did that, I started looking for a model 1 entry on the lower time frame, right? Which price showed here after forming this order block on the 15-minute time frame, right? Now, if you are thinking that this candle did not purge any high or low, then how this is an order block, right? Then the answer to that is this particular candle tested a key level, tested a higher time frame key level, or simply it tested a previous order block, which means that this particular candle filled liquidity, right? So first of all, this candle filled liquidity and then price closed below it. So it follows the two criterias for being a valid order block, and that's why I took this candle as my order block, and price formed a model 1 entry as soon as this candle was engulfed, and I took my entry there. uh, at the open of this order block, my stop loss was above the order block's high, and I targeted the candles low below us, right? And the drawn liquidity, I targeted drawn liquidity. Now what you can also notice is that even in this trade, a CRT was used and considered in play, right? The trade was not without a CRT, because we had the SMT divergence. That's why I regarded these highs as protected highs and adjusted to the new scenarios and looked for short plays without a purge, right? The purge had already happened on DXY, so that was enough for me. Now, if DXY had not taken those lows, right, and if it didn't had or showed any SMT divergence, then I wouldn't have taken this trade, right? Because for me, either one of the pair, either the benchmark pair or the underlying pair, or either the DXY or the EU, one of them has to purge the candles, right? That's a requirement for it. If none of them purged any CRT or any candles, I wouldn't have taken an entry. But because DXY purged the candles and EU did not, and we had an SMT, that's why I traded on the EU, right? So what you can see that is that first of all, I started off with the higher time frame, the weekly and the daily, to determine two things: our higher time frame draw liquidity and our higher time frame buys. And once I determined those two things, I went down to the 4 hour time frame to do another two things: to find a CRT there so that we could position ourselves successfully, and then also on the 4 hour time frame I had to build a narrative first, right? With the help of intraday profiles, key levels, SMT divergence, and CRT, so that I could know that how and why its price was gonna go lower, right? So after determining my drawn liquidity, I then selected a CRT on the 4 hour, and then with the help of 4 hour time frame and 15-minute time frame, I built a narrative there with all of these concepts like intraday profiles, key levels, and SMT, right? And built a sharp narrative, right? And after that, I went down to the intraday charts, the 15-minute time frame, to execute my lower time frame entry setup, which was in the form of model 1 entry setup, right? And I traded that. That was my trade breakdown.